Okay, let's talk about something that pretty much everyone in the working world has an opinion on: the performance review. Just hearing those words can make you feel a little anxious, right? It's this universal process, but for so many of us, it's just filled with dread. So today, we're going to dig into why this system, which is supposed to help us grow, so often feels like it's doing the exact opposite. And I'm not just talking about a vague feeling of awkwardness. Get this. According to Adobe, 22% of office workers, that's almost 1 in 4, have literally cried during a performance review. I mean, just let that sink in. A process that's a standard part of business is so stressful that it brings people to tears. That's not just a minor issue. That's a sign that the whole thing is fundamentally broken.
And this has real-world consequences that go way beyond hurt feelings. Take a real story about an employee named Gina. She was known as a dedicated, high-performing employee. But because her company used a rigid, force curve rating system, she got a mediocre review. And that one review left her feeling so completely undervalued that she actually started looking for a new job. This is what happens. Bad systems push great people right out the door.
So that brings us to the big question we're tackling here. Why is this tool, which was literally designed to help people improve, so often harmful? Where are we all going so wrong? Here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at the dreaded annual review itself. Then, we'll clear up the difference between management and appraisal. We'll get into the psychology of why good people can give bad ratings. And then, we'll flip to the solutions, how to build a better system, why a 360-degree view is so important, and finally, the art of the actual conversation. All right, let's dive into part 1, the dreaded annual review. This is the problem that pretty much all of us know firsthand. You know, the problems with the old school annual review really come down to 3 big things. First, it happens so infrequently. I mean, how can one conversation possibly sum up an entire year of work? It's just not realistic. Second, it can be totally dehumanizing, right? Boiling down all your contributions into a single number or a label, just like what happened to Gina. And finally, it's often completely disconnected from what you actually do day in and day out. And here's the thing. It's so important to be clear about this. The problem isn't feedback. Feedback is absolutely essential for us to grow and get better. The problem is the broken, clunky system that we've been using to deliver that feedback. So the goal isn't to get rid of reviews, it's to build a system that actually helps people. Now, to even start fixing this, we've got to get our definitions straight. We throw around the terms performance appraisal and performance management like they're the same thing, but trust me, they are worlds apart. So, performance management. Look at the key words here. It's a continuous process. It's about developing people, and it's about aligning their work with the big picture company goals. This isn't a single meeting. It's an ongoing partnership, a constant dialogue designed to make sure what you're doing matters. And when you put them side by side, the difference is just so clear. An appraisal, that's a one-time event. It judges the past, and it feels like you're getting a verdict handed down. But management, that's a continuous process that's all about developing the future through a real dialogue. You could say one is like looking in the rearview mirror, while the other is like using a GPS to figure out where you're going next. So the big takeaway here is really simple. That annual review, the performance appraisal, it's not the whole game. It's just one small piece of a much, much bigger performance management system. And when we make that one little piece the entire focus, that's when the whole system just falls apart. Okay, part 3. Let's talk about the human element. Because even with a perfectly designed system, things can still go wrong. So why do good, well-intentioned people end up giving bad, unhelpful ratings? This gets us to what researchers call the performance management dilemma. In theory, we all agree it should be a helpful tool. But in reality, it gets tangled up in all sorts of office politics and interpersonal awkwardness. See, managers are often more worried about motivating their team than they are about being 100% accurate. And that creates a really tricky conflict. Let's be real about what this looks like. Politically, ratings can sometimes be used to reward the people you like and, yeah, maybe punish the ones you don't. Interpersonally, let's face it, most managers hate having those tough, critical conversations, so they'll just give higher ratings to avoid the conflict. And at its core, the manager's forced to be a judge and a coach at the same time, and those two roles just don't mix well. And on top of all those social pressures, you've got the way our own brains work. We all have these mental shortcuts, these cognitive biases that get in the way of being objective. So even when a manager is trying their absolute best to be fair, These sneaky biases can creep in and totally mess up their ratings. There are a few classic biases that show up all the time. First, you've got the leniency or severity bias. You know these managers, right? There's the easy grader who gives everyone top marks because they want to be liked. And then there's the hard grader who thinks nobody can ever measure up. Neither one is giving you a clear picture of reality. Then you've got central tendency. This is a manager who takes the path of least resistance and just rates everyone as average or meets expectations. It feels safe, it avoids conflict, but what's the result? Your top performers feel totally invisible, and the people who are struggling don't get the specific feedback they need to improve. And of course, there's the famous halo effect. This is a huge one. It's when a manager's overall feeling about an employee, whether it's good or bad, colors all of their specific ratings. So if they really like you, they might unconsciously rate you as excellent at everything, even in areas where you're actually just okay. Okay, enough about the problems. Let's start talking solutions. Part 4, building a better system. How do we actually create a performance management system that works for everyone? Well, any great system is built on what you could call 4 pillars. First, it has to be congruent with strategy, meaning your work is clearly connected to the company's goals. Second, it needs to be meaningful. It should only measure things that you actually have control over. Third, it has to be inclusive, which means you get to have a say in your own review. And finally, it must be seen as fair and acceptable by literally everyone who uses it. And of course, there's more to it. The system also needs to be thorough, it has to be practical to use, and the feedback has to be specific. The data needs to be reliable, and the whole process has to be communicated clearly from the top down. You know, getting this stuff right isn't just a nice to have, it's a massive competitive advantage. So if we want a system that's fair and thorough, we have to get good data. And to do that, you need to look at performance from every possible angle. This brings us to part 5, a 360-degree view. Just think about it for a second. Your direct supervisor, they only see one part of what you do. What about your coworkers, the peers you collaborate with every single day? Or if you're a manager, what about your direct reports, the people who experience your leadership up close? And what about you? Your own self-assessment is crucial. You could even include feedback from clients. Each of these people has a unique and valuable piece of the puzzle. And that's the whole idea behind what's called 360-degree feedback. You're not just getting a top-down review from your boss, you're collecting input from the full circle of people you work with, above you, next to you, below you, and sometimes even outside the company. It creates a picture that's so much richer and more complete. When you bring all these different perspectives together, you're not just getting more information, you're getting better information. Any single person's biases start to get balanced out by the others. And what you're left with is a much clearer, more reliable, and more defensible picture of someone's actual performance. It stops being about one person's opinion and starts being about a body of evidence. All right, we've reached our final and maybe most important section. Because you can design the most brilliant system in the world with perfect data from a 360-degree review, but if the final conversation is handled badly, it all falls apart. Let's talk about the art of the conversation. Here's a super simple playbook for that conversation. What you should do. Be specific. Use concrete examples. Be an active listener. Try to understand their perspective first. And always set mutual goals for the future together. Now, what you don't do. Don't judge their personality. Talk about their actions and behaviors. Don't ever use destructive or sarcastic criticism. And please, don't play God. Don't act like you're some all-knowing judge. Your role is to be a coach. There was a company called Electric that really put this into practice during the pandemic, a super stressful time for everyone. They made a conscious choice to lead with empathy. They decided to see their employees as whole human beings who were dealing with a ton of stuff, not just as workers. They focused on positive feedback and support, and that human-centered shift changed everything. So if you want to have a truly great feedback conversation, here are the keys. Make it a frequent thing, a continuous dialogue, not a scary once-a-year event. Always focus on performance, not on personality traits. Make sure the employee is an active participant and have them do a self-review. And always end by looking forward, setting clear goals that you've both agreed on. So let's just end on this question. What if we completely reframe this whole experience? What if your next review wasn't something to be afraid of, not a verdict being handed down, but a genuine conversation designed to help you grow? Because a system that's built on dialogue, on fairness, and on looking to the future, well, it doesn't just create better ratings. It builds a stronger, more engaged, and ultimately more successful company for absolutely everyone.